Now you're ready to adjust your rudder pedals. Push that little metal lever on each pedal to the inside. Adjust pedals so you have full throw and can comfortably apply brake without stretching. And so you can rest your heels comfortably on the deck with the balls of your feet placed lightly against the pedals, with your knees relaxed and the weight of your legs on your heels. Then make sure each lever is back in locked position. Now operate the pedals slowly, giving full throw both ways, and watch the rudder to see that it responds properly. Move the stick from side to side and watch the ailerons. Move it fore and aft and watch the elevators. Move the controls evenly so that you can feel any variation in pressures which might indicate that something is wrong. Now glance down to your left, and there on the side of the cockpit is the trim tab regulator. Its functions will be demonstrated later on. Meanwhile, just set it at neutral with the handle pointing straight up. In making the cockpit check, you will always begin at the extreme left and work from left to right, clear across the cockpit, covering each control and instrument. That way, you're not likely to forget anything. In this airplane, the cockpit check begins with a trim tab regulator and moves next to the throttle and mixture control. Set the mixture, the lower red handle, for full rich and open the throttle about an inch. Still further forward underneath the instrument panel is a red valve which turns on the gasoline, allows it to flow from the fuel tank down into the engine. Turn this to the on position. Directly above on the instrument panel is the ignition switch, which we've already mentioned. But check it again by sight and by feel to be sure it's off. Your plane captain's life may depend on it. Now we come to the instruments. Reading left to right, there's first the airspeed indicator, which, as we've pointed out, is somewhat like the speedometer on an automobile. At this point, it should read 0. Next, the altimeter. It tells you how high the plane is above sea level. You set it for field elevation before each flight. This is a turn and bank indicator. It'll prove invaluable to you later on, but for the present, forget it. The tachometer tells you how fast your engine is running in terms of revolutions per minute. It should now read 0. The oil pressure should also read 0, and the oil temperature should be about the same as the temperature of the outside air, or warmer if the plane has been flown or warmed up recently. This handle operates the engine fire extinguisher. It releases a bottle of CO2 in the engine, which will put out most engine fires. But don't pull it just to see what will happen.
In fact, you won't need to pull it just to see what happens, because we're going to show you. The inimitable Mac will demonstrate.
Engine fire extinguisher. I wonder how it works. I bet you it's out of commission. Let's see. You just pull the handle.
The engine will usually quit when you use the engine fire extinguisher. You make an emergency landing, perhaps in somebody's cornfield. You phone in, and you have some very embarrassing explaining to do. There's no discredit attached to an emergency landing, you understand, provided it's unavoidable. But emergencies such as this one are a needless risk of the student's life and of Navy equipment.
Use the engine fire extinguisher only if there's a fire in the engine. If any other part of the plane catches fire, use the cockpit fire extinguisher. As part of your cockpit check, better be sure the cockpit fire extinguisher is properly secured so it won't come loose when you don't want it to. Now you're ready to start the engine. But first, a word about the plane captain. His job is a tough and a thankless one, without glamour, and he deserves your consideration. The plane captain's a busy man. He has other planes to start besides yours, so he may want to start cranking before you're ready to go. Don't let him do it. Before he starts cranking, he must challenge you with...
Gas on, switch off.
He must not start cranking until you reply to his challenge. If he does, ask him to wait. Then, when you are ready, give him a nod, and when he says...
Gas on, switch off.
You very quickly check your gas valve and ignition, then answer his challenge. Gas on, switch off. Plane captain will then prime the engine and crank it. And while he's cranking it, hold the brake. This you do by pushing into your toes on the top of the rudder pedal. Holding the brake keeps the plane from rocking back and forth while cranking, and thus makes the plane captain's job easier and safer. When the inertia starting mechanism is turning over at a good rate, the plane captain will stand clear of the propeller and challenge you.
All clear.
Meaning that he and all other personnel and equipment are out of the way of the propeller. If the area looks all clear to you, you answer his challenge, all clear. Then he immediately challenges you,
Contact.
and you reply, contact. Then you quickly turn the switch to both. Whatever you do, don't pump the throttle. It does not help to start the engine, but it does overload the carburetor, thus creating a fire hazard. As soon as your engine starts, take a look at your oil pressure gauge. If within a half a minute it doesn't come up to the minimum operating pressure specified in the pilot's handbook for that particular plane, the engine must be stopped quickly to prevent damage. If you have the type of plane in which the crank is carried in the baggage compartment, throttle back a little so that the plane captain can stow the crank without having his hat blown off. But listen to that engine. Don't let it die. Throttle slowly if it starts to miss. And watch the plane captain while he buttons up the baggage compartment. Ensure the fastenings are secure. Now turn your attention to the oil temperature gauge. Keep the engine turning over at 800 to 900 RPM until the minimum specified oil temperature has been reached. Then you're ready to test your mag. First, look around behind you. Be sure the area is clear.
Yes. And this is one of the many ways in which our friend Mac wins friends and influences people.
Take a good look aft to see that all is clear. Then put on your brakes and continue to hold them on. Hold the stick all the way back to keep your tail down. Gradually advance the throttle until you're turning up 1,400 RPM. Now turn the ignition switch from both to left. Watch the tachometer. If it falls off more than 100 RPM, the plane's not airworthy. Next, turn the ignition switch back to both and wait until any lost RPMs are picked up again. Then turn the ignition switch to right. Again, you should not lose more than 100 revolutions per minute. Return the switch to both and ease the throttle all the way back. With the engine idling, turn the ignition switch to the off position for just an instant to be sure it'll turn the engine off. Now, if the plane has passed your inspection and testing, you're ready to taxi out for the takeoff. But suppose that sometime during the inspection you find something wrong. Let's take an imaginary case. First, you call for the plane captain. It may be that he can fix the trouble in a few minutes. And he, in turn, may call the line chief. But if they can't fix the trouble or you're not satisfied the plane is airworthy, contact the duty officer. Describe to him the difficulty, check the plane, and ask him for instructions. That's the procedure if you find something wrong with the plane. Now, stopping the plane is a relatively simple matter. Set the throttle so the engine will operate at 800 to 1,000 RPM and let it run that way for about a minute to cool it off. Then bring the mixture control back to full lean position. This will kill the engine. When the prop has stopped turning, turn off the ignition switch immediately and open the throttle all the way. Move the mixture control to full rich and close the gas valve. Lock the controls by putting the stick full forward in the center. Neutralize the rudder pedals Push the control lock handle forward, down, and back. And then jockey the rudder pedals until they lock in place. Finally, lock the tail wheel, then call out to the plane captain, gas off, switch off, controls locked.
Gas off, switch off, controls locked.
Gas off, switch off, controls locked.
That's the pre-flight inspection and starting and stopping procedure. After you've had a little experience, you'll be able to inspect the plane covering every point and start it, all within just a few minutes' time. The idea is to develop a regular routine. Form the habit of covering every point quickly and well. Also, all primary trainers are not exactly like the one we've seen today. There are several different models. So you'll find it profitable to study the pilot's handbook for whichever model you will be flying. And remember that the airplane is a delicate instrument. Whether in the air or on the ground, treat it with care and respect.